In the 2000s, we became aware of something called alpha-gal syndrome. A tick had been spreading, and if this tick bites you, its saliva contains a sugar molecule that is also found in mammalian meat. Your body will trigger an immune response to this and identify that sugar molecule as something dangerous, creating an immune response. This Lone Star tick bite will make you allergic to meat. Now, we first discovered this, of course, at least based on what we think we know, around the 2000s. In 2012, scientists proposed human bioengineering in order to stop people from eating meat against their will. Indeed. He was talking about climate change, and he said, what are some of the problems that we're facing? Well, humans like to eat too much meat, and meat generates a lot of carbon. So what if we force people to stop eating meat by making them allergic? He goes on to reference the Lone Star tick and says, this thing can make you allergic. So what if we did something like that so that people could no longer eat meat even if they wanted to? Well, good news, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the lab-grown meat investment to the tune of billions of dollars, we can engineer in a lab a kind of meat that does not contain the alpha-gal sugar molecule, meaning if you are made to be allergic to this meat, to all meat, not poultry or fish, but red meat, by this tick, don't worry. Just buy Bill Gates and whoever else's lab-grown meat. Now, I don't know that they're actually engineering a lab-grown meat to not have this alpha-gal molecule in it, but they can. So many people are saying this seems strange. Around the same time, we are seeing a massive explosion of tick bites across the country. And I got the map for you. We are seeing a massive investment into lab-grown meat. Could this be a coordinated plan? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. What I can say is you will hear it straight from the man's mouth. I'm sure many of you have seen this clip already, where he actually says we should induce meat allergy into people against their will so they won't be able to have a cheeseburger. Man, I got to tell you, I love me a cheeseburger, okay? I don't eat red meat all the time. I don't eat it a lot. In fact, you got to be careful, especially the guys are getting older. You got to make sure you take care of them intestines. Make sure you're eating right. Too much meat is bad for you. But people have a choice. If I want a cheeseburger, I want a cheeseburger. You can tell me I can't have a cheeseburger. Well, take a look at this. The story went viral in February, but we've got many updates right now. WEF Nerd wants to genetically engineer meat allergy to stop people from eating steaks. Yeah.
So I'll give two examples. So one is that people eat too much meat, right? And if they were to cut down on their consumption on meat, then it would actually really help the planet. But people are not willing to give up meat. Yeah, some people will be willing to, but other people, they may be willing to, but they have a weakness of will. They say, wow, this steak is just too juicy. I can't do it. I'm one of those, by the way. So, but so here's the thought, right? So it turns out that we know a lot about, we have these intolerance to, for example, I have milk intolerance. And some people are intolerant to crayfish. So possibly we can use human engineering to make it the case that we're intolerant to certain kinds of meat, to certain kinds of bovine proteins. And there's actually analogs of this in life. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can kind of possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
We can induce the meat allergy in you so you can't eat steak anymore. From the New York Post, tick bites are sending Americans to the ER at the highest rate in nearly a decade. So during the second week of April, 71 out of every 100,000 emergency room visits were for tick bites, more than double the usual average of about 30 per 100,000, said the agency, which said this year's numbers match data from 2017. Now, the argument people are making is that we had a short winter, it was very warm, and there's a big boom in the deer population. So the deer be spreading these ticks all around. Well, many others, I say many, I don't know how many, but there's a lot of people who are arguing this is an intentional spreading of ticks with the intention of making it so as many people as possible are allergic to meat and can no longer enjoy steak. Here's the thing. Alpha-gal syndrome, which it's called. You can still eat fish. You can still eat chicken. Thank God. But I think a good steak is important every once in a while. But yeah, if you get bitten by one of these ticks, it's very likely you will not be able to eat meat ever again. And what's freaky is that there is a guy who has said 14 years ago, we should induce this. Now, I want to be careful. This guy, I think actually I have the paper here. Human Engineering and Climate Change by Matthew Liao. I believe that's who it was. That's at least all the references say it is. I'm trying to be careful here. He didn't just advocate for making people allergic to beef. He advocated for genetically engineering humans to have cat eyes so we can see in the dark and don't need lamps. At least that's what I'm reading online. I don't know, maybe it's wrong. Take a look at this from WBUR.org. Ticks that cause a rare, dangerous red meat allergy are spreading. What precautions can you take? This is, of course, from April 2nd. You can see the Lone Star tick as seen here. Let's take a look at what they're talking about. Massachusetts recently joined more than a dozen other states in mandating doctors and blood labs to report cases of an unusual tick-borne syndrome known as alpha-gal. The very dangerous and sometimes fatal condition makes those who contract it allergic to red meat and occasionally to mammal products like dairy. Reactions can be mild, but in many cases, they send patients into anaphylactic shock. In 2024, a pilot became the first known person to die from alpha-gal after eating a hamburger at a barbecue. The illness is caused primarily by the Lone Star tick, and for more than a decade was most common in Arkansas, Kentucky, and Virginia, where doctors have long been reporting cases. But now the disease spreads. Up to 450,000 Americans may be living with the syndrome, according to a Stony Brook University report. Many are unaware they have it until the first allergic reaction. Tony High of Bella Vista, Arkansas, is living with alpha-gal. He considers himself lucky because he reacts to mammal products only with hives. Quote, I had hives just covering my body for about 3 weeks, and it led me to, try to get some testing done and figure this out. Luckily, it was identified rather quickly. Allergist and immunologist Dr. Tina Merritt diagnosed High with the allergy at the Allergy and Asthma Clinic of Northwest Arkansas in Bentonville. Reactions range from hives to nausea and vomiting to anaphylaxis or worse. At worst. The hard part with alpha-gal is it's usually delayed. And so some people may not associate their reaction with the hamburger they had for dinner. Merritt said, and it's usually at 2 a.m, they'll wake up with dizziness. That means their blood pressure is low. And when the blood pressure drops, they usually describe dizziness, but it happens very quickly, so they may not have much time to get attention. Was your diagnosis scary? Certainly scary. I carry an EpiPen now. That's epinephrine, an analog for adrenaline. You jam into your leg and it injects you to keep you alive. Says I've luckily never needed it, but I make sure I never travel without one. Stopping red meat and all mammal products is, of course, the first thing you do. But the first year that I had it was quite tough. And so the remedy is just a lot of antihistamines. Now I eat a lot of chicken, eggs, and vegetables. How conscious are you? He says it's very real. If I go to a restaurant, it's absolutely concerned that there may be cross-contamination. If I have family or friends who are cooking a meal for me, they may think that, they've modified to help me, which I'm very grateful for. But oftentimes that turkey or chicken sausage that they're substituting has a pork or beef casing. Dr. Merritt at University of Virginia, you knew Dr. Thomas Platts Mills, who's also studying allergies. He'd been contacted by somebody who had a cancer drug, and people were having adverse reactions. They couldn't figure it out. He tested and found some of the alpha-gal antibodies were in the cancer drug. How does a tick get the molecule and then bite a human and deposit it? Merritt says there's a group in Mississippi that measured tick saliva. They found the Lone Star tick and the black-legged tick, which is more common on the eastern coast. Both contain alpha-gal. We think it might go into remission if you don't get bitten again. The hard part is if you get bitten again, your immune system develops a good memory, and you may not be able to go into remission. High says a fear of mine is getting bit by another tick that's infected and having my symptoms get worse. Cases on Martha's Vineyard grew from 2 in 2020 to more than 500 in 2024. Merritt says there's plant-based insect repellents. You can use that. Do all Lone Star ticks have alpha-gal? We are not sure. It's very difficult to measure tick saliva. But the group in Mississippi did measure tick saliva, and the Lone Star ticks and the black-legged tick contain alpha-gal in their saliva. And it's present in the little tiny seed ticks as well as adults. Hi says, I try not to let fear impact my life too much. I still live an outdoor life. I'm not going to stop walking my dogs in the woods. I'm not going to stop mountain biking, but I'm more aware. One thing that I just really am glad about is that this is getting more attention. Says you go to a restaurant, you don't know about cross-contamination, and you know people are using beef tallow and fry later. You may think you're doing the right thing and eat a French fry and have a reaction. The question is, my friends, is the spread of ticks across the country that we are seeing intentional, manufactured, or just coincidence? What I will say is, it is very difficult sometimes. You have a guy associated with the World Economic Forum saying we should induce allergies into humans so they can no longer eat red meat. You then have a massive explosion in this particular tick population that makes people allergic to red meat. And at the same time, you have investment into lab-grown meats. And it's possible to engineer that lab-grown meat to have no alpha-gal molecule, meaning if you become allergic to red meat, you'll always be able to buy their lab-grown alternatives. Now, I will say this. I don't know if there's any kind of real conspiracy. I mean, certainly these people's interests are aligned in this direction. The production of lab-grown meat and the questions over whether we eat too much are born from the same reality. These Malthusian climate change, whatever you want to call it, individuals, Malthusian, of course, meaning they think there's too many people, are both at the same time advocating we stop eating meat and trying to develop alternatives to, raising cattle. So I don't want to say that it's a connection that Lone Star is propagating and lab-grown meat is being developed. That guy, I believe his name is Dr. Matthew Lau, says, hey, look, what if people were allergic to meat? You couldn't eat it. In the minds of these individuals, they say, stop eating meat. He goes in this direction, and it's possible that Bill Gates or other people go in the lab-grown meat direction. Let me see. Let me figure out. How much did... Bill Gates is a major investor in lab-grown cultivated meat industry, yes, but how much? How much invested? That's what I'm wondering. Let's see. And Richard Branson are betting big. Bill Gates invested $17 million in a Series A for Memphis Meats in 2017 alongside Richard Branson. Supports companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. I will just say this, Beyond and Impossible are disgusting. They actually don't taste all that bad, but the salt content is insane. I don't touch that stuff. I remember when Beyond Meat came out, which Beyond is better than Impossible, I think. One of them is like pea protein. I got no problem with that. That's fine. I like that Catalina Crunch cereal. It's keto, high-protein cereal made from pea protein, and it tastes great. I'm a fan of that stuff. I'm a fan of cutting down on sugar. Humans consume way too much as it is. The question right now that everyone's asking, the conspiracy theory as it is, that the ticks are intentionally being spread to maximize the allergy to red meat, to cut down our consumption of cow. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's a conspiracy? Do you think it's a coincidence? We'll see. About $3 billion so far has been invested in lab-grown meat. The one thing they can't really get right, though, is the fat content, I guess. I've seen these stories. Well, who knows, my friends? Maybe you do. Comment below. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Stick around. We got more coming up for you throughout the day. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next segment.